Hi, welcome to the Whitey White Guy Show. I'm Whitey, and I don't often talk about football on this channel or sports in general. When I was growing up, I was a Bears fan my whole life, a big sports guy, and I just kind of drift away from it. And one of the reasons why is I was centrally a Bears fan before anything else. And when I'd play like Tecmo football and Madden games, I'd play the Bears, and it drove my buddies nuts because they got sick of it. They would go from team to team and whoever was big at the time, and I was always the Bears. And now I don't even, I'll when I'm at work on my breaks, my lunch break, usually by the end the game's been played, and I'll watch the highlights of a game. But there was a time, if you come find me 1995, 1994, 1996, I could tell you the whole roster down to like the practice squad. I go by jersey number and tell you every player on the team, most of the coaches, all that kind of stuff. I was on top of everything that was going on, and up until the Lovie Smith years, I would be sitting there on ChicagoBears.com regularly. What's the latest? And since the Bears have fired Lovie Smith, it has been, I think, there's been a season where they went to the playoffs legitimately, and then one year they got into the playoffs, but that's because they expanded the amount of teams going in. They otherwise wouldn't have. It's been a mess from John Fox, Mark Trestman before that, now Matt Nagy, and now Matt Nagy and Ryan, the head coach and the general manager Ryan Pace have been fired, and good. They weren't getting it done. They did some good things, brought some good players, got off to a good start, and it has been a rough few years. And I get it, Cody Parkey, but that field goal was partially blocked. Somebody got a hand on that, so sorry for your loss, Cody Parkey. But the good news is the head coach and a GM that weren't going anywhere. They're spinning their wheels. They're gone. But the downside is anything going to change? And the problem is the Chicago Bears organization, the McCaskies, don't know how to put a football team together. They don't know a good coach from a crap coach. And got lucky with Lovie Smith, but they hamstringed the guy every year for years. They were just a player here and a player there. From call it 2006, of course, when they went to the Super Bowl, called 2005. Every year, they're one or two guys short of going to the playoffs every year and making deep runs every year, and they just kept finding a way to fuck it up. And there's something psychologically wrong with that organization in relation to Olin Kreutz. Olin Kreutz was a phenomenal offensive lineman. He was a center for a lot of years for the Bears. He was a multi-year Pro Bowler. He was a fantastic individual lineman blocking and an excellent leader on the team. And when he came up his last year, after his last season, they couldn't find $500,000 to get him signed. And it's like, that guy. And then once he left, that was the beginning of the end for their offensive line. They had offensive line problems for years and still do. And he was the guy who took that offensive line and made it good every year. Unfortunately, they didn't have a quarterback for a lot of it. Then they let Olin Kreutz go, and then they got Jay Cutler, who's got an arm, but they can't protect him. And it's just like, figure your shit out. But these problems aren't current year or modern era. This goes back to, and I've said this before on this channel, this goes back to when they fired Ditka. Mike Ditka was hired by Papa Bear George Halas. Since then, they've had a few good runs. They've had a few good years. Lovie Smith, Dave Wannstedt had three good years there. Dick Drawn got them to the playoffs once. Lovie Smith got them to a Super Bowl and an NFC Championship. Damn near went to 2 Super Bowls. And since then, I think they've had a winning season or 2. It's been a mess. But the systematic problems, the consistent themes and flaws have been there since the McCaskies took over after George Halas died. And since the last, Mike Ditka was the last time we had some truly dominant football around here. And since he's been fired, it's been middling at best. And when they do go to the frickin' Super Bowl, hey, who should we have as starting quarterback? I know, Rex Grossman. Why? Just why? Oh my gosh. So they just can't. In 1995, after having Steve Walsh as quarterback in 94, who was a very solid but vanilla quarterback, Eric Kramer was phenomenal. 3,800 passing yards, 29 passing TDs. Crushed it. Defense had injuries. Defense sucked. They didn't make the playoffs. They missed by half a game. And since then, they've mostly had really good defense and a good running game, but a crap passing game. When they do have a good passing game, by some universe anomaly, the defense sucks. Every time. Every time. The last 2 years that Jay Cutler was with the Bears, he put up his best numbers and solid numbers by anybody's metric. And the defense was the worst it had ever been in the team's existence. It was 80 some odd years at that point. Statistically the worst they'd ever been. You finally got Cuddy, and he's playing some great football, and you got Alshon Jeffrey, and you got Brandon Marshall and Martellus Bennett, Matt Forte. Oh my God, the line's blocking, and the defense is the worst it's ever been. Now injuries played a part of that, but going forward, they let Olin Kreutz go because they couldn't find $500,000. They treated Urlacher like crap, Brandon Marshall like crap, Forte. At one point, Lance Briggs wanted to renegotiate a contract and they wouldn't do it. It's just like they just don't take care of their people. And when they do decide to spend some money, it's on a bunch of jagoffs. And they blow massive chunks of money on some nobodies that don't do shit. Who is it? Bobby Massey, I think, or the other guy. They put a bunch of money into a tackle, offense line, left tackle, and the guy was middling and got like $30 million. And it's like all the problems, and that's where you decided to go spend big. And so it's like your multi-year Pro Bowlers, your future Hall of Famer Olin Kreutz. I just think it. And then if you don't remember, in 1996, I don't remember, after the 95 season, after 10 years of your most consistently accurate kicker in your history, Kevin Butler, you couldn't find $50 to keep him, so you let him walk and replace him with Carlos Huerta, who sucks. You fire him, you bring in Chris Bonial, good idea on paper, fails horribly, and finally you get Jeff Jager in there, and it was too late, and you missed the playoffs by a couple games. And it's like, have you got Jigger right away or just found some money and paid Kevin Butler, they might have gone to the playoffs in 96. And so and then in 95 they draft Todd Sauerbrunn. They had Chris Gardocki, who's fine. He's productive. He's a solid punter. They go and spend a second-round draft pick on a punter in Todd Sauerbrunn. He shanks punts all over the place. Ultimately goes to the Pro Bowl, becomes a really good punter. But his rookie year, he really struggled. If you take him out of the equation, they go to the playoffs. So you go to the playoffs in 94, 95, 96 with just a couple of moves. And they couldn't get it done. The 97 roster looked like jagoff. They go and they take a first round and they trade it on Rick Meyer. Why? So just so that in 95, don't draft Sauer. But I love the kid, but don't draft him. And instead draft a defensive end opposite Alonzo Spellman, and he'd most definitely go to the playoffs. Get a solid guy, Alonzo Spellman, Chris Zorich, Jim Flanagan, and me. The McCaskies don't know they don't know football. The thing they're in charge of that they make their multi-billion-dollar fortune off of, and they don't know anything about it. They don't know a good coach from a bad coach from a good player from a bad one. They have no clue what they're doing. And that's been self-evident that you can count on one hand how many times they've gone deep in the playoffs in the last 30 years. So I can't. It's hard for me to even care. And in a way, I root against them. You know, I was kind of. I wanted to kind of root for Andy Dalton just because he's a fellow Ginger. Really, that's it. And then he played a few good games, had a few good seasons here and there before he got hurt, and then just flat tire. Nothing. Nick Foles had a few minutes, but here and there he won a game, but against another crappy team, it's just like, God damn it. And I've been saying from day one, Justin Fields, who's a talented quarterback, got some potential. Not in Chicago. I don't care if he plays for 3, 5 years, or 15. He ain't gonna do shit in Chicago. They got to work on his mechanics, which are goofy. But they're not going to. Why? Because the McCaskies don't know anything about football. And then apparently they offered Olin Kreutz $15 an hour to be an offense line. I have no clue if that's true. That's why he's saying. It's just like, why would you mistreat that guy? I don't get it. All the work he did for you, and I hate that about the McCaskies. Somebody comes in and busts their ever-loving ass. When Eric Kramer, he couldn't stay healthy for several years there, but they drafted Cade McNown instead of Donovan McNabb. And you're going, Donovan McNabb, the superstar who did amazing things throughout his career? Yeah, that guy. Who'd they draft instead? Cade McNown. Who? Exactly. Geez, why do they have a quarterback problem? Because when the obvious is sitting right in front of them, they can't see it. So, yeah. Goodbye and genuinely good luck to Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy. I hope they find success somewhere. If they're not in Chicago, they might be capable of it. But, what's going to happen next? We're going to sign another bunch of jagoffs and dumbasses. Or it's like the Abe Lincoln General fill-in-the-blank effect. Like, the generals had potential, but the president was retarded. Abe Lincoln was militarily retarded. In case you didn't know. Civil War. Look into it. It's the same thing. So even if the coaches could get you somewhere, the McCaskies. Sorry, Chicago. It's going to suck. Until Virginia passes away any day now. And we get somebody in there who has a goddamn clue, because these people don't. They're the wrong kind of Irish. They're like the Kennedys. It all got handed to them, and they're dumber than a brick. God damn it. So, good luck. We're fucked. Cheers.